are going live. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a special edition of Monte the Pharaoh, along with Benny from Dan and Benny in the Ring. I want to thank everybody for joining us on a just makeshift show on a Monday. Jimmy got here in time for his dedication, and Benny, no one's more dedicated than you. Benny, want to say happy birthday to your son? What do you think?
Happy. I guess Matthew Holland is it's his birthday today. I wanted to give a shout out to my son Matthew, who is believe it or not 41 today, born March 18th, 1983. You know, I don't know, somehow he got to be older than me, but I guess that's the way it is. Using some Scott Steiner math there.
You know, it's funny, if you have a child that is born, if you're born on a leap year and you have a child, then your child is going to end up being older than you. What do you think of them apples?
That's right. Yeah. If you're born on possible.
All right. Well, little recap I want to talk about. Big event was this weekend. We were looking forward to having Jimmy in the house. Jimmy, you want to tell everybody what happened to you? I don't know if you covered Friday, so apologize.
I had a great time. You didn't see me there? What are you talking about? It was awesome.
What happened, dude? What happened?
In the middle of the night, I got an email from Delta Airlines telling me the flight was basically, postponed. And I started scrambling. I got on the phone with them and tried to get another flight. And then they wanted to bang me more because I had canceled the original flight. And it just turned into a big clusterfuck, and it just, Lawler backing out, and I started weighing all the pros and the cons, and I was actually, Mike, this is your fault. You've educated me with money, and I thought to myself, I'm like, this is not worth it. We got no Lawler, and they're gonna send me there. I wouldn't get there till like late Thursday night, and I would have blinked twice and been back on a plane. And Mike, you do know how much I hate flying.
Yeah.
So I thought to myself, I was like, something, this is just not worth it. And it sucks.
I thought that might have weighed in. You were like, fly, not fly, no Lawler. I'm not going to want to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And you'd be right to think that way, because that's kind of what happened. I mean, it didn't help that they were trying to double the price to get there. I'm like, wow. Delta has no responsibility whatsoever. They acted like machines. So don't fly the friendly skies, folks.
I was telling my wife, there's a little, with today's algorithms, right? If you go to look at a flight today and you don't book it, and then you go on a few hours later, the price will already have been shot up on you, because they already know you're looking already.
And not by a few bucks, like by a lot.
Right. Oddly enough, you're so right, Mike, because the day before, Karen had been looking at flights, and they were way cheaper than the next day when I actually did the booking. So you nailed it. You nailed it.
Yeah, that's the way it is. So, so the big event, I got there, right? There was no guests. We did Chuck Palumbo on Friday. Saturday was going to be Perry Saturn along with Andre the Giant's daughter. I got there early. Like, I met Eric Sims, super agent, because he was also going to do an interview, and I helped him set up his table. And I was just hanging out. We were next to Devon Dudley. I was bullshit with him. And went and got a picture with Sky Blue, because we're all fans of Sky Blue. I felt it was necessary, right? The president didn't show up, right? And ESO overslept. So all good. I took a picture. And then Johnny Photo, who's been on the show. Steve Kotenberg, welcome. Always love seeing you. Hope all is well. Hope you're healing there. Little shout out to everybody. Loose Cannon, beautiful to see you. Beth Harper.
Playmate's
wonderful. Jason Morning, as always, good to see you. Matthew Holland, as you mentioned earlier, Benny, having a birthday today. So that's fantastic. He's a good little guy. And little Patty making the return, which is wonderful.
From Missouri.
Wow. So took a picture with Sky Blue, and I'll leave it off to you guys first. I'll just leave you with this. She's way too small to be a WWE superstar. And I'm talking as a female. Way too small.
What are you talking like? Are you talking like Rio size from AEW? Remember her? She was like this tiny little Japanese.
Height wise, Jimmy. Height wise, yes,
really?
100%.
Wow. What was she, like 5 feet tall? What are we talking here?
I'm 5'10", so she's probably under 5 feet.
Wow.
Great. That's great. That's great. Who's her
And
manager?
my wife
Sky
goes to me,
Low?
"Who's that girl? She looks like she's 13."
Wow. So let me ask you this, because we might as well. After all, we know why you're such a big fan of Sky Blue. How's her rumper?
Too afraid to look.
You were too afraid to
I was
look.
too afraid to sneak a peak. I was trying to. I
no.
just couldn't get around to it.
Very interesting. I really should have been there. I probably just would have walked behind her and gone, never mind, Mike. You know,
Forget it.
unbelievable.
Betty, what do you think of Sky Blue, man?
Well, I don't know much about her, but as far as like the height thing, I love Alexa Bliss. I mean, I love the character, but I mean, she's what, 4'11", 100 pounds. And I actually saw her beat Nia Jax once and wrestle competitively with Ronda Rousey. And I had a tough time with that. It just didn't work.
Really? I find that Alexa Bliss has a big aura, don't you, Mike? I mean, she might be small, but she plays big.
She got the charisma, absolutely, but just, I mean, she's minute.
Bliss definitely plays bigger for sure, Jimmy.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a fan of Alexa, right?
Yeah, me too.
But
me too.
But I get where Benny's coming from for sure.
Oh yeah.
I mean, a 272-pound woman, and she, it just, for me, it didn't work.
What was it like? Rick McGraw against Kamala or something like that? You just can't buy into it.
So Jimmy, let me ask you this.
Frankie Williams against Andre.
I was thinking about that, right? Because way back when you were still in studio, we were talking about Johnny Gargano and how big fan you were of his, and I'm like, dude, the guy, he just can't translate. And then I started thinking about Adam Cole and how I thought they had it right by trying to make him a manager with Keith Lee.
Right.
Dude, I got to tell you, man, Jimmy, when you're next to these AEW guys, even Luchasaurus, what's his name now? Killswitch?
Right.
Tall guy, but not big in the arms. Like,
Really?
And what's the kid's name, Benny and Jimmy?
What,
the
Hook?
one with the mother. The one that's hanging out with Christian Cage now. Someone in the chat room remembers the guy's name. He was there. The kid looked like he was 5 years old.
Okay.
And I was just thinking, is there anybody from AEW that translates to the WWE? And obviously MJF. Mother Wayne, thanks, Luce. So the mother and the kid were there, and the kid looks like he's fucking 15. But I don't even think MJF translates. You want guys take it from there, man. That's what I was thinking.
I mean, could you see MJF against, say, like Roman Reigns?
Yes.
You could?
Yes. Yeah, I could. Well, see, there was just one thing about it gets back to playing big. And just to clear this up quick, Mike, I was never a fan of Johnny Gargano, but I get why the crowd's into him. All right. I am a fan of Adam Cole, and I do think Adam Cole doesn't play big. Adam Cole plays huge. I remember when you called me when he made his debut, and even you were impressed with the bigness of Adam Cole. Now, it's turning out you were right, that Adam Cole should have become a manager. He should have managed Keith Lee, and that would have been an amazing combo in the WWE. But then Keith Lee would have been forced to stop eating donuts. So there's that problem.
Can't have that.
You know what I'm saying? I can. It gets back to aura. MJF, if you just look at his skull, he's thick. All right, he's not frail by any means.
No.
He plays huge. Like, look, maybe it's a little overstated to throw the Piper name around, and you know what? It is overstated. That's Roddy Piper we're talking about. But MJF does have a huge aura, and he's thick. So he might not be necessarily a skyscraper, but I think he could pull it off in the ring with Roman Reigns.
What was Piper's height and weight?
Oh God, Mike, do you know that offhand? He wasn't 6 feet, was he?
I would think he was about maybe 6 feet, maybe $180. Without a doubt, Piper during WrestleMania was hitting the gas a bit, right? He got a little bulky there.
Right.
But overall, not a big guy. And always remember, Jimmy and Benny, when they brought Piper into WWF, I understand he was still injured from the ear with Greg Valentine.
The dog collar match.
But they did bring him in as a manager. I think they wanted him to get that managerial heat and let people get used to him before you threw him in the ring with Snuka. And I don't know who I was. You remember Jimmy and Benny, Madison Square Garden, the Giant Killer. He beat the crap. Andre let him beat the crap out of him to put him over. It was like Andre couldn't get a shot in. They disqualified Piper at the Garden. because he
Right.
beat Andre so bad.
Right.
So there is ways to bring in smaller guys. Jason Warner
Yeah.
says smaller wrestlers can be convincing with the right look and demeanor. Ivan Putski, Dynamite Kid, Kevin Sullivan weren't tall, but they're built and scary looking. Those are good points.
Right.
But
Right.
MJF, Jimmy, you might be right. He might translate. I'm just not sure. Like, remember when I said to you, what would happen if they brought Gargano in and he wrestles Randy Orton? Like, how does that even work?
Well, he can't beat him, that's for sure. He shouldn't beat him, and I wouldn't have him beat him. But he could give him a competitive match. There'd be a lot of like leg scissor flying and stuff like. You know how Mysterio gets away with that sort of thing with bigger guys. Johnny can do that. Johnny's a smaller version, or I don't even know if he's smaller, but he's a less believable version of Daniel Bryan in my book. You got a grappler who can do a million little different things. You know, Johnny Wrestling, he didn't get that name by accident. He did earn that. He's a great in-ring wrestler. But again, if he fights Randy Orton, his ass is getting RKO'd. I don't want to hear about any other finish, at the end of the day. And Randy's a pro, so he'd probably find a way to put him over, make him look good, make him look like, oh, wow, for a second there, right, Mike? Isn't that the best
Right.
part? For a second there, I thought he might roll him up and get the pin, but he doesn't in the end.
How about Chad Gable and Gunther? Wasn't that? I mean, Chad Gable put on a hell of a match against Gunther.
Right. Well, Chad Gable is another one. Chad Gable is insanely strong. I'm sure we've all realized that by now too. The thing I like about Chad Gable, but it's too late. I love the fact that he's got the background he's got. You know he's a real wrestler. You know he's as strong as can be. But I'm sorry, I'm stuck on Shorty Gable. I'm always going to look at him that way. That's something where it's like, all right, Vince, maybe that wasn't the best idea. Once in a while, you lay an egg, and that wasn't the best idea because Gable's proven he can be very entertaining. I enjoy the shit out of him. But
by the way, Luce says MJF has the size and can talk for days. Canon approved. Listen, if Luce is approving him, and Farrell's approving him, and Benny's approving him, then I guess he's the one guy. Benny, when you were watching as a younger man, and you would watch San Martino, did the WWF at the time have any smaller wrestlers where you're like, like maybe a Putski, where you like, this guy's too small or anything like that?
Not with Putski because he was so strong. So you really couldn't, but like a guy like Rick McGraw, when he'd go in the ring, you thought like, he's going to get squashed. I'm trying to think who else was small back then. Rods, maybe. Rods really wasn't that small. I'm thinking McGraw. Like McGraw would be a good example of a guy that he just looked overmatched.
But me personally, I remember believing Rick McGraw could beat some of these guys. I never was like, oh, he's not big enough, right, Jimmy?
I feel like everybody's forgetting about how Rick McGraw came in, but I never forgot. Rick McGraw came in almost okay. You remember how it wasn't as long, obviously. Remember how Tatanka didn't lose for quite some time when he first got to WWE?
Right.
Rick McGraw came in and was winning. And sure, he was beating the scrubs or whatever, but wasn't that the formula back in the day? So he came in. He's beating the lesser guys. And then Arnold Skolin, I'm telling you, it happened. Arnold Skolin came out with him. I took Rick McGraw very seriously. Obviously, behind the scenes, something was going on with Rick. And then he wound up turning into what he turned into. And the next thing we knew, he was gone. So it was like, and I mean, really gone. So, but
I don't remember that first part. I'm glad you said that. I just remember at the end, he was kind of jobbing everybody, but so he did pick up some wins along the way.
He picked up a lot of wins in the beginning. And I remember, didn't he have a match at Shea, Mike, on that card back in the day?
If you remember, Jimmy, they teamed him up with Andre the Giant for a tag team title against Fuji and Saito. And we thought McGraw was going to finally win the tag belts.
Right.
We thought it was finally McGraw's time.
I liked Rick McGraw. I thought he was pretty damn cool. And you know what? You want to talk about short and put together? Well, what's the difference with him and Putski except a few more veins, maybe? But in general, Rick McGraw was put together,
and
man.
Let's not forget, guys, back when Jimmy introduced me to wrestling, because I remember that clearly, you had guys like Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert, right? Yeah. He wasn't Hot Stuff then. He was Eddie Gilbert. You had Kurt Hennig, right? Remember Kurt Hennig?
Kurt Hennig was tiny compared to those guys.
Tiny.
He couldn't even weigh 200 pounds.
Right.
Yeah.
But he could wrestle.
You know what? Maybe we judged too soon. All I'm saying is when I was standing next to her, I'm like, you know what? the WWE women are big women. And I don't mean big like ugly big. I mean, they're just like lean and tall. They're like volleyball players. And it's like, how do you sell this? Like, I heard you guys on Friday, which was a very good show, by the way. You guys are fantastic. And Thursday, by the way. Good recovery from the studio deal. But lost my you guys were talking about Rio, right? On how small she is. And even my wife, we put on Dynamite for a minute, and she goes, "This is so stupid. How is this girl in the ring? She's not like," and I was like, yeah, at some point you got to have rules to the size of your wrestler, I think.
Right. Well, there's no more cruiserweight, right? Where's the cruiserweight belt? We don't even have one anymore, do we?
Well, that's
a shame. I mean, back in the day when I first started watching, they had the NWA World Junior Heavyweight Championship.
Right.
And that was a legit title. I mean, a lot of guys like Danny Hodge, Hiro Matsuda, back in the day, Angelo Savoli, before he got old. I mean, all those guys, it was a very prestigious title. And I don't know if maybe they could resurrect something like that. I mean, something like that, maybe like MJF could hold on to that thing forever.
Yeah.
I would never want to see that belt on MJF. That would be a crime in my opinion. But the misrepresentation of the cruiserweight during the WCW time, people forget that the cruiserweight division in WCW in those days when the NWO was doing their thing, that's where we got all those great names that we know about today. And they had built that belt up and that title up, whether it was Mysterio or Malenko or even Jericho, whoever it was. I mean, that was a great little time period for. But you know what really killed the cruiserweights? And Mike, I'm sure you'll agree with me. That 30, whatever that thing live. Yeah, that was like, forget about it, man. It's over.
By the way, Don the Barber's in the house. He said he met Tiffany Stratton, and he's 6'2", and she was just a few inches shorter than him. So that's a perfect example, right? That's a 6'2" man. So she's close to like 5'10". That's that's a large woman, and
that's a woman that's going places, in my opinion. That's a talented lady.
Dude, there's so much talent in the women's division, and that's what I want to say about the big event. I was telling Sims, and me and Devon were talking about it, right? I said to Devon, did you notice that all the headliners for the show, and the big event's a big show, it was all females except for the Big Show and Kevin Von Erich. It was all females. And I said that to Devon, and Devon's like, if I would have knew that females were so hot in wrestling, not meaning hot like hot, but so popular, he would have entwined himself with more female wrestlers, meaning maybe managing them, things like that. I mean, listen, the majority of wrestling fans, I have to believe, are male, and they're obviously driven by females, right? Attractive females. It was so as a person watching, because I was sitting at a booth, I was watching these wrestling fans, and I'm thinking to myself, because some of them guys, they save every penny they're making for this event or whatever event they're going to, if they're in Indiana, wherever else they are. And they dump $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 because they love the sport so much. And at first I'm thinking like, oh my God, like, come on. But wait, here's the thing. So the Mark and me gets on the line for Kevin Von Erich because I'm like, I just can't give up the opportunity, right?
Right.
Jimmy, you know me, if you know how much I love the Von Erichs, right?
Yeah, makes sense.
I get online and I'm watching this family, husband and wife now, and they can see they both, simpatico, right? They love wrestling. They went to CJ Perry's line and they gave her flowers. They were both bawling that they were meeting her, crying, like uncontrollable.
Crying over meeting Lana. Okay, go ahead.
But all of a sudden the asshole in me changed, and I was like, you know what, man? It must be really, really nice. Really, really nice to have that kind of influence over people that they, I mean, Jimmy, Benny, who, by the way, Donna Barber says the Dudleys had Stacy Keibler, who Pharaoh tore up the other night. Did you tear her up the other night for being in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, I tear her up every time you mention her. And I love the fact that Phil broke it down by inch per leg, how much she was charging. She's like she's 48 inches of legs, and she was charging $10 plus per inch. It's just
By the
absolutely insanity.
they paid her. I heard the total spend on her was
Yeah.
$200,000.
Oh,
How
come
much?
on,
200,000.
Oh my God!
Just
And
stop
she was
it.
charging how much?
And I heard, just a rumor, I heard she did it like so. A lot of the guys who booked her, right? There was a combination of guys that booked her. They sell in bulk to other vendors, right? So, like, say Sims would buy 100 photos or whatever. I
Right.
heard she didn't finish signing all the photos. She left. That's the rumor I heard. I don't know how true it is, but
Wow.
but
Wow.
$200,000. And you know what, dude? People were online. They were online.
Right.
So
Interesting.
I'm online with Kevin Von Erich, and I get on there with Kevin. He literally spent like 20 minutes with me, Jimmy and Benny. Unbelievable. But one thing I want to say it on air because I was so like, this is where I felt I wanted Jimmy to be there, because I had the Monte The Pharaoh sweatshirt, and he says to his sons, Marshall, I don't know what's the other guy's name, Marshall
Ross.
Ross. He's like, hey, it's Monte and the Pharaoh. And they're like, we love that show. And then Kevin goes, I love your partner. I love the Pharaoh.
Nice.
And I'm like, I said to him, I go, if my partner heard this, he would faint on the floor right now. Well, hold on. I just want to finish it. And then he says, you know why we love the show? He goes, because I don't know what it is. We had 1 million, bless you. We had 1 million fans in Texas and all over the world. But the New York fans got it. They get wrestling. And I guess when they mean New York, they mean Boston, Philly, the Northeast.
Oh, absolutely.
And he's like, they just got it. And he used the word smart mark. And I was like, I was like, that was weird. He goes, and they're not smart marks.
Right.
And he goes, that's why we love your show, because it's just like New York flavor, no bullshit, whatever. And I was just, at that point, Jimmy and Benny, I was marking out, right? I'm just like, thank you. Like, I didn't even know what to say to the guy. And
right.
Here's what I want to ask you guys. I was trying to think why. All right. So again, not to repeat it, but Jimmy brought me into wrestling. I met him in junior high. He was watching wrestling. I had no interest. I became friends with him, and he turned me on to it. And, I was watching WWF. That's what I watched all the time. And then cable came out, but Georgia Championship Wrestling. I was trying to figure out what turned me on to WCCW. And I'll just give my opinion. I'll ask you guys why, or if WCCW was important to you. You had the WWF, which was, even back then under Vince Sr., I felt was a lot of entertainment. And then you had Georgia Championship Wrestling, which was more wrestler, catch can, more seriousness. You took the characters, not more serious, maybe more serious. I don't know. WCCW, I thought, was the ultimate mix of the two together. And I think that's why I was turned on to it, because it was entertainment plus wrestling. Thoughts, guys?
Hit it, Benny.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of with you. I mean, and I had watched, obviously, WWF for years. Had been watching Florida Championship Wrestling and Georgia Championship Wrestling. And all of a sudden I see this. It's like, wow, this is like the best of everything. It had he had the entertainment, but it was also Bill Mercer, the announcer, was, in my opinion, very underrated. Just, not quite the Gordon Soley or, JR level or Lance Russell, but very, very good, and really, made the action seem very credible. And you had some mega stars. I mean, God, Vonerichs, rock stars. You had Chris Adams, you had Gino Hernandez, and then you had this guy from Queens, New York, named the Dingo Warrior, who, kind of became a star after that. Just like, I mean, it was great. I couldn't get enough of it.
I always felt, and I don't think this was a surprise to you, Mike, I always felt, even back in those days, that the NWA felt the realest.
Yes.
It just did. It did to me. Maybe that was because of the great Gordon Soley and how he presented it also. but it just felt the realest. Texas will always be Vonerichs and Freebirds, period. Everybody else is just more and more icing on the cake. And what a roster they had. Like you just ran over some of the names. Gino Hernandez, I always wonder about, the Marvel comics, what if Gino Hernandez had lived? I mean, I could only, what if David Von Erich had lived? I mean, you can only imagine. But Texas was a huge hotbed. I mean, I don't know, Mike. You want to try to rank Georgia, Texas, and Florida, and what order would you put them in? I know you probably put Texas first.
You bring up a great point, but I got to ask you this now that you brought it up.
Yeah.
Would Gino Hernandez have translated to the WWF at his size?
I think so. I think he played big enough. He'd probably have a valet. You know what I mean? Or something along those lines. I mean, you got to bring him in as a bad guy, in my opinion, but that's me. I think that he could have pulled it off. I don't see any reason why not. There's a lot of guys we'll never really know about. I always wondered about what Dick Slater would have been like. Just certain guys. I just wonder about them, and we'll just never really know.
But Mike, are you talking about Vince Sr. or Vince Jr.?
Either or. As much as everybody wants to separate the two, I tend to believe that they both had somewhat of the same mindset, right? Vince Sr. obviously more old school for sure, but either one, Benny. Let me not go long with that.
So I'm gonna come up with this term, territory appeal versus national appeal. So I think, Vince Sr., he could bring somebody in like a Gino. Gino, obviously, if Gino had stayed alive, I think I could have seen him and Flair going back and forth, just like Magnum, for the NWA title. Maybe even Chris Adams if he had stayed around. To have national appeal, the list, in my opinion, is very, very short. You got a Hogan, you got a Piper, you got a Rock, you got a Stone Cold. How many guys really? Even now, Bruno's my hero. Bruno's been my hero for 56 years. I don't think Bruno, if Bruno was born 20 years later, I don't see Bruno doing what he did.
This might sound controversial, but I don't even see Bruno back then in those days. If he had gone into the NWA, I don't think he would have done what he did up in the East Coast.
Because I remember Pedro went to the AWA for a bit. And it didn't sell at all. Right.
Mike, how was Zbyszko's run with AWA? Did he draw any fannies? Because I always felt Zbyszko should have been WWF champion. Oh yeah, after the Bruno thing.
So give Dan and Benny a little props here, Jimmy. And you probably did know this, and if you didn't, now you're going to learn something new. I didn't.
Okay.
I remember back in the day with Zbyszko and Backlund and San Martino. Obviously, it was San Martino, but I remember Jimmy. If anyone didn't know, Jimmy used to write a magazine, like a dirt sheet. He had a pretty good group of people. Actually, he was did the same thing with like Heyman did, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I was always interested. Like I'd ask Jimmy, because I think Slaughter was wrestling Patterson at the time, and I was like, "Does Slaughter ever wrestle Backlund?" And then he would show me in other arenas he might wrestle Backlund. So there was a point where Zbyszko was wrestling Backlund. But again, props to Dan and Benny in the ring. They found out that Zbyszko held up Senior at Shea Stadium.
Wow.
And Bruno tried to talk him out of it and said, "You're making a mistake. We could print money with this." And Zbyszko goes, "Nope, I'm going to get what I can right now." And that's what ended Zbyszko's career in the WWE.
Yeah, because within 6 months, he was losing to Dominic DiNucci at Parsippany High School. So, I mean, he took a huge fall after that.
So let's really hammer Mike's original thought process home now, okay? Once upon a time, there was Larry Zbyszko, who held up Vince Sr. and was gone shortly thereafter. Once upon a time, there was the Dingo Warrior, as you referred to him earlier, who held up Vince Jr., and his shit was gone. Maybe they're not so different after all in the main premises of how they ran the business.
Well, I think any promoter, if you make an agreement with a promoter, and then you go back on your word and say, "Yeah, I told you I would do this for this much money, but now I want X times 3." I mean, I would have no use for that guy either.
Right.
I
Yeah,
might
but
give it to him.
You know what's funny? Like we're talking about the McMahons, right? And it always seems like someone was holding up the McMahons. But you know, the funny thing is, when you look at it, wasn't it Vern who, when Hogan was doing it, you know, really doing well over there, Vern turned to him and goes, "Oh no, I keep all your T-shirt stuff."
Right.
And you understand why these wrestlers are going to get what's theirs. I kind of understand what Zbyszko's doing, but it's like, I guess, know your promoter. And it's
Right.
like, you know, how come Vern doesn't get a lot of heat for the stuff he used to do to the boys?
Right.
Like,
Right.
you never hear Vince screwing over the boys, right?
Right.
Either Vince, right? They had a handshake, you did what you had to do, and that was it, right?
That was it.
Vern
And
was
you
just
know what?
Vern was a horrible businessman. I mean, great wrestler, but I mean, I think the day that, I could be wrong, the day that Hulk wrestled Andre for WrestleMania 3, they were at the Boylan Catholic High School in somewhere bumfuck Illinois, you know, probably wrestling to 400 people. So who made the right call?
Right. Yep. And people forget this too. In the late 1950s, the NWA, Mike, was trying to keep Vince Sr. in check. And Vince Sr. was like, screw you, I'm forming my own territory. I'll show you.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So how different is Vince Sr. from Vince Jr. as far as his cutthroat? You know, we're gonna win, damn it, and then we're gonna do it my way. I have a vision, and I'm gonna carry it out. And thank God, Vince. You know what, Benny? Thank God, Vince Sr. said to the NWA board, "Screw you." There's this kid that I really want named Bruno Sammartino. There's your hero right there.
Right.
You know, so it's Vince Sr. had just as much rebellion in him as these people that they idolize today. You know, and then Junior, forget about it. Junior was
Yeah, I mean,
like,
you really
I'll
think
take them
about it,
all
though.
out.
He risked a lot by leaving the NWA. I mean, that was a crapshoot on his part.
Those genetic bulls running the family.
Yeah, I mean, if that had failed, he's out of business.
That's right. That's right. Just like the WrestleMania gamble. One of probably the greatest and smartest gamble in the history of this business is to put his entire life down on and bet that that wrestling could have a Super Bowl, and it does. And it does.
So, on Friday, The Rock did his rock song, and you know, a lot of the fans are like, "What's going on here? The Rock is looking for love. He's supposed to be a bad guy."
No.
No. And then, you know, in one part, The Rock was making fun of Cody crying. Right.
Right.
I want to kind of bring you guys back. Does it hurt a wrestler when they cry? And the one that came to my thought today was, the same person on two scenes. One, when Backlund loses to the Iron Sheik, and that was Backlund's end of his run, so I don't think it was such a big deal, right? That's one. Okay. But two, when Superstar Graham rips Backlund's belt apart, Backlund, instead of beating Superstar Graham up, right, he cries. Does that hurt the face? Does the face? Or let me ask you this: does Cody go crazy on The Rock tonight, or does he cry about Rock making fun of his mother?
I don't think he's going to cry again. But you know what? What have they shown during this whole storyline run here with The Rock and Roman Reigns and Cody and everything? They're feeding into whatever they sense from the crowd. The crowd, obviously, which is not something we're fans of, Mike, obviously, but you know, They fed into the fact that The Rock, if they had done it the way they were going to do it, then The Rock would have been booed constantly, and he couldn't play the face role. So what's the point? You know what I mean? The Cody crybaby thing, I think it's pretty smart that they had him cry. To tell you the truth. You know, I think they fed into it a little bit. I don't think that they're going to overkill it. I don't expect them to ever do that again during this program. And honestly, he probably should go batshit on The Rock. He probably should. I think that would work out just fine. So I think they're feeding into a lot of what the internet is spewing out at them. And I don't think that's stupid. I think that's pretty smart.
Jason Morning says he feels like Cody's crying is played out. He needs to include wetting himself.
Okay, that'd be interesting. Well, maybe Austin can come out with that gun and go bang. You know what I mean?
Benny, is Cody in trouble of losing the fans at this point?
If if Cody does not win the title, he loses everything.
Yeah,
That's really
I agree with that, but
that's what this comes down to. Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. And they're gonna. It will kill Cody Rhodes' career. I believe that. I don't think that
he's taking a one-way trip back to Stardust, Phil. After
Yep.
that, but
And
I'll tell you what, though, I
fact that
read
The Rock
something
put
online
Stardust
about The
up.
Rock taking a lot of heat for
Yeah.
using profanity in his promos, and
stop
a lot of the wrestlers are complaining. Why can't I do that? Let me tell you something, though. Johnny Gargano could say fuck 87 times, and he's still got the personality of a dead moth. The Rock is The Rock. The Rock is a Van Gogh in a room full of people who are painting by the numbers. I mean, you got to let The Rock do
You're right.
Yeah. I mean, with a couple of exceptions, of course. I'm not saying nobody can talk, but nobody can talk like The Rock.
I would love to know who the people were. Mike, has it come out at all who the people were that actually had the balls to bitch that The Rock has freedoms they don't?
You know what? You don't always know if it's true or not. Look, there's a lot of clickbait out there. But I want to go back to your comments, both you guys, about Cody. George, we're talking real life. George Foreman, how many title shots did he lose until finally he knocks out Michael Moore? He didn't lose his gas.
No. Wait a minute. That's a completely different career trajectory when you're talking about George Foreman. Because George Foreman, in his prime, was a bad mother effer and was a champ. All right. I mean, Olympic, whatever it was, the guy was considered at least one of the top 5 boxers in the world during his time. Okay. That comeback came years and years later. And no one thought that George could do it, except for this idiot. I was jumping up and down. I was like, George, we all knew George had the power of, it's kind of funny. Sorry, Logan Paul. George Foreman had the real true, that punch. If he could get one good shot in, and he almost got it against Holyfield, too. He almost had him for a second there. I was like, oh, my God, he's going to take him out. But it's a completely different deal.
Bruce says it took Foreman 8 years to win in '94. And I'll throw this at you guys on this one. You've already invested all this time in Roman towards Hogan. And Jimmy, Benny, you guys weigh in, give your points. I understand this. If Cody gets screwed over by Seth, which I'm going to stick, Jimmy, you came up with that months ago, and I'm still sticking by it. I really think it's going to happen. And Cody loses his heat with Roman. But then comes the fight. That's a whole 4 or 5 months wrestling Rollins.
Right.
And then he can finish Roman at SummerSlam in the Garden. Right? I think that's when it happens, right?
I don't see it. I just don't. I mean, as much as I would love it if it happened and Roman kept the belt, I can't see the fans. I think the fans would just be like, "Oh, screw this already. You're just playing with us at this point." You see, we're not part of the Cody crybabies, but there's a lot of them. All right, agreed. There's a lot of them. All right, they're a decent, good sized portion of your paying customer base. You can't make them feel like just complete ass clowns. You can't do it. And I don't think they're going to do that. I mean, as much as I would love to see Roman hold the belt forever, I mean, is it really?
This ends Roman, then, Jimmy. Ends Roman. He can't carry on.
I don't see that. I see that if Roman lost the title, Roman would finally get a well-deserved vacation, and I think it would be for quite a while. I don't think you might even see him up to a full calendar year. But when you see him again, everyone's in trouble. We'll all buy into it. Think about it. Your Roman Reigns is taken away for a year, okay? And then he comes back, and you know damn well what he's here to do. I can see him completely regaining traction. Hogan was able to have the title more than one time. Yes, the first time was the best time. It'll never be the same as the first time. Bruno was able to take the belt back. Yeah, I mean, even Pedro, what was it? Did Pedro hold it twice, or am I mistaken?
No, Pedro only held it once.
He held it once. Okay. But, you've seen other champions come back and win the title. It can happen. You know, even Hogan came back years later and won. You know what? That was the
Oh, yeah.
greatest feel good moment when he won the title on his return after the NWO. That was fantastic. So it doesn't end Roman Reigns, but I do think this would end Cody Rhodes as we know him. As
Benny, how
Fiend
was
is.
Sammartino's second run compared to his first run?
I didn't like it as much. I think a lot of the magic was gone. I think, and in reality, Bruno was doing the McMahons a favor because apparently Pedro wasn't drawing that well. And Bruno said, all right, well, I'll do it for a year until you find a replacement. And but I'm only going to wrestle in the back in the day, the first run, he wrestled, 275, 300 times a year. The second run, he wrestled maybe half of that, just doing, the larger venues. But it took the McMahons almost 3.5 years to find Graham to replace him. Actually, they found Backlund, but then Backlund wasn't ready, so they had Superstar hold it for a while. But it wasn't the same. He didn't use his backbreaker anymore, which is that was his finisher in his first run because he couldn't do it anymore. He was older. I mean, he was 40, probably close to 40 when he won it again the second time. It wasn't the same. I mean, it was nice to see him. He was my hero, so of course I'm happy that he's champ. It wasn't the same. The magic was gone.
Right.
Going to swing you guys a different way. Donna Barber brings a good point up. Any shot of Gunther losing the IC title at WrestleMania?
Better not happen.
Not to Sami Zayn. I hope not.
It better not happen. Who said that? Was it What a Day? Somebody was like, "Oh, it'd be great if Chad Gable beat Gunther." Oh my God, are you kidding me? Oh my God.
No, it was good that he gave him a good match, but no, it wouldn't be good at all. I don't think it would be good if Sami Zayn beat him either.
Right.
See, I don't see that. I mean, maybe a Bronson Reed, maybe.
Yeah.
But even him, I mean, he's kind of green.
Right. I think the only way Gunther should lose the belt if it's you know what, in my opinion, the only one who I would buy it, because Gunther to me is being this whole reign is being groomed towards him eventually becoming world champion, universal champion, one of the belts. The only person I can think of right now that I would buy into if Gunther did drop the title and was pinned for it is Braun Breaker. Because eventually stay with me. Because eventually I see Braun Breaker being world championship material. So the only person I would want Gunther to lose to is Braun Breaker. Not a single other guy in this entire, roster would I be happy with outside of Braun Breaker. That's it.
Do you think it's possible that here's what I see. I see Gunther turning against Imperium, turning babyface, keeping the IC belt, and then wrestling maybe like a McIntyre for the champion.
Here's the thing that we're missing here, Benny, though. There's too many faces in the WWE now.
Yeah.
You do not have enough heels. It's like it's full of faces.
Well,
good.
To me, I'm factoring in that Seth's going to turn.
Okay.
That's true. Well, here's the thing, too, though. I'm still holding hope that Brock Lesnar comes back. I'm still hoping for that match. Now that they're reinstated, I'm thinking, is there that possibility? Real quick, Jason Morning says he wishes LA Knight would get a title. You guys think LA Knight's done? He's done here?
I don't think he's done, but if you want to keep what he at least still has going on, which is quite a bit, he's very over. The only one he should be beating is Logan Paul. I don't want him beating Gunther. I don't want him beating Roman Reigns. I do not want LA Knight beating Seth freaking Rollins.
Not yet, anyway.
Right. I mean, I could see him beating Logan Paul. And you know what's weird? Logan Paul won't really lose anything from that.
No.
So that's the thing that makes the most sense to me. If you're going to put a belt on LA Knight,
I thought that was a no-brainer at WrestleMania. LA Knight, Logan Paul for the U.S. title, and then you get a belt on the guy.
Right. Well, obviously they think differently. They figure he's
why AJ Styles? I mean, that was kind of random.
Well, you got to get matches. You got to start starting anything. We're 3 weeks away, man. We're right around the corner. I got to tell you what was going to be a great WrestleMania is kind of coming up flat, in my opinion. It's like, I'm not so sure I like any of these. Like, obviously Cody and Roman and the tag match is great, but
Right.
Gunther's title defense, the tag team. I mean, look at who they're going to defend the tag team belts. That whole list that's going through this whole thing. Who's even enjoyable on that? Beth Harper wants to know what happens to the bloodline, especially since if you guys are right and Cody wins after WrestleMania.
Go ahead, Benny. That's your flair.
All right. Well, I'm thinking, first of all, I think the WWE is lulling us to sleep, thinking that they're not going to deliver. And I think we all think that right now, based on everything that's happened the last couple of PLEs. They were kind of flat. I mean, they did the job. Like Jimmy said, they were serviceable. And I mean, so far, even the Hall of Fame, I mean, even that's under-delivered. I think what's going to happen is they're going to just knock us on our ass and over-deliver with some really great matches and really great surprises. And I think that The Rock and Roman are going to win night one. That has to happen because, the fact that they brought up.
If you don't do bloodline rules, Benny.
Right. You can't bring that up without delivering on it. So then now all the odds are against Cody night two. I got to think The Rock turns on Roman.
Yep. I agree.
Because a lot of the stuff The Rock is doing is babyface.
Right. No,
By the way, you brought up the Hall of Fame. Thunderbolt Patterson. With all due respect, I was never a fan to begin with. And not that he's not Hall of Fame worthy, but Thunderbolt Patterson? What is that?
Go ahead, Benny. He's your boy from your time. You tell me.
He's not my
Jimmy,
boy.
Jimmy, you're laying up on this one, huh?
Well, I'm angry about it, but Mike, I don't want to beat a dead horse. I mean, I think, oh God, I think Karen just talked to Barbara Goodrich the other night. Brody and McDaniel were put in through the back door. They didn't even call the families. Thunderbolt Patterson's going to get like a whole thing.
That's
you're going to tell me
right.
Thunderbolt Patterson is Brody and McDaniel? Get the fudge out of town.
Can't even mention those guys in the same sentence.
I mean, come on. Oh, God, it makes me sick.
Does he deserve to go in? Is he a Hall of Famer? Yeah, probably.
Why?
But not
actually,
not
Jimmy.
That's so many.
Wait a minute, Benny. Jimmy's asking a legitimate question. Explain
Benny,
why. Because I don't know
Benny,
why either, to be honest with you, except for his wandering eye, which I hated when I used to put on Georgia Championship Wrestling. And let's move the elephant in the room, right? Right. This is an African American who used to backstab his brothers to keep them down so he could make money.
That's what I've heard as well. That there was unfortunately there was a quota as far as black wrestlers on a card, and he kind of boss hogged his way in on a lot of them at the expense of other black wrestlers.
Which, by the way, you got to take care of yourself. You got to take care of your family. I get it. Right. But I mean, this is not a super representative of the African American community in pro wrestling. I could think of a bunch others, to be honest with you.
Look, last I checked, I think most of them are in anyway. Last I checked, it's Bobo Brazil, and it's Ernie Ladd, and it's Tony Atlas, and it's Ron Simmons, and I'm sure there's some more.
I think JYD, right? It's JYD.
JYD. But listen to the names.
I'm not sure if he's in or not.
Listen to the names we just dropped. You're going to put Thunderbolt Patterson in that room? No way.
Hey,
you went outside.
Luce says Thunderbolt Patterson actually could talk, not great in the ring. I just remember him being very annoying to me. When he used to come out, I'd be like, what is this guy doing out here? And by the way, give me Iceman King Parsons before Thunderbolt Patterson. I know we're keeping on black wrestlers, but that put him in there. Thank you.
Hold on. Mike, can you help me out here? Is our buddy Hacksaw Butch Reed in the Hall of Fame?
He is not. And that is a great comment.
There you go. That's exactly.
What?
Somebody who actually wrestled in the territory.
Yeah. I mean, long live Bobby Lashley. He'll be in the Hall of Fame one day, and rightfully so. But Thunderbolt Patterson over Brody or McDaniel, he's going to get they're going to have a speech, and the family will be there and all that stuff. Get out of here. Lame. Very lame.
I don't know, man. Oh, Lou says switch over Thunderbolt Patterson. Good call, Jimmy. That was a great call.
Yeah, that's a perfect
I was a huge Natural fan. Natural fan.
Absolutely.
Reed actually pinned Flair on TV once. I mean, Reed was over. He was the stuff.
Yep.
Benny, you're right. He was the stuff, man. It's hard to disagree. We'll do a little Dark Side of the Ring. I guess we'll head out after that. They've had a couple of shows. They had Earthquake, and they had Buff Bagwell. The Buff one was really flat. The Earthquake one was a bit emotional. Like, I didn't realize John Tenta was such a great family man. Maria Davis says, hello, Jimmy Farrow.
Hello, Maria. What's happening? I'm surprised to hear that the Buff. How do you make the Buff Bagwell thing lame? I mean, the guy's a walking headline waiting to happen. One misstep after another. How did that turn out to be?
You know what? I got to be honest. It was really there. We said it 2 years ago, and thank God they didn't listen to us because we wouldn't have been on it last year, which was a big deal. But they've lost gas. I mean, there's not much more to talk about. You're right. Buff would seem like that type of story where it's a train wreck. But again, why does doing drugs the dark side of the ring? Like, killing your wife and child, yeah, that's dark side of the ring. Right. Brian Pillman, that's dark side of the ring, right? That's right. Like that,
right.
I don't know. Bruiser Brody, dark side of the ring.
Yeah. Yep. After a while, I guess they ran out of, maybe that's good news that they've run out of bad things to say. Maybe that's good news. I don't know. I'm just surprised that the Buff Buff didn't have the stuff that night. That's interesting.
I want you guys, Friday, and I wish you were there, Jimmy, we interviewed Chuck Palumbo. I want you guys to weigh in, give me your thoughts on Chuck Palumbo, the wrestler, and then Chuck Palumbo, the interviewee.
All right. Chuck Palumbo, the wrestler. I remember not feeling one way or the other about Chuck Palumbo, the wrestler, to be honest. I always thought he had a great look, but I never really heard him say too much on a microphone. He was serviceable. That's what I remember about his wrestling career. He was serviceable, and he played roles well. I mean, as well as he could. I thought he was great with Billy and Chuck, obviously, even though that whole angle made me nauseous. But it did. I wasn't into that. I was like, oh, for God's sakes. But you know what? He did it well. There are not too many times where I feel really great regret. In my life in general, if I had tons of regret, then I probably wouldn't do half the crazy shit I've done over the years, to reinvent myself and then to go from bands to Monte and the Pharaoh and things like that. But I regretted not being there for Chuck Palumbo interview because, Mike, that is one of the best damn interviews in the history of our library. That was an absolute freaking grand slam. You were fantastic. It blew me away that Chuck was such a good person. You could see how even keel he was. And shame on those morons writing in that, when he gave his opinion about Benoit, look, he was there. He worked with Chris. He knew Chris Benoit, and he gave a very, very honest answer as an eyewitness to someone who traveled with Chris and knew Chris. And you got these morons typing in like they know better. I want to ask you something. Why would the Canadian police be like, Vince gave us money and we don't have to do our job? I mean, what is this that we get to this level of conspiracy horse shit?
I want Benny to weigh in on this too, but because we're talking about the interview, but you bring up such a great point about Chris Benoit. I'm in shock, Jimmy. You're bringing up such good points that people are still defending Chris Benoit to this point that they're saying they never really know if he murdered anybody. He was just Mick McMahon did it, Kevin Sullivan did it. And I promise not to say his name, but I have to. When you got shows out there like Lee Cole, who's a one-trick pony that will just say anything to get a view, that's why you can't listen. There's something really wrong with you if you think that Chris Benoit didn't do what he did. It's like just call it a day.
Right. Well, you know what, Mike? Another thing too, and you know what? I don't care what this sounds like to people who don't know us or know who we are. We sat at a bar with Kevin Sullivan, okay? I mean, I was coming straight off my divorce, and Kevin Sullivan was talking to me like a friend. All right. We talked to him about this. We asked Kevin, how do you feel about this when they try to pin it on you? And you could see how sickened he was by it. He was like, people are effing insane. And I'm not the barometer for sane. You know what I mean? Like Kevin was saying that. It was like, these people will just whatever floats their boat and whatever works for their own personal hate campaign. And that's what we have here in this
Jimmy,
particular
but you see,
case.
that's the thing. You say it's a hate campaign, but believe it or not, you said you were reading the comments. These people actually believe that Chris Benoit is innocent. It's like, oh my God. This is why you got to realize in life, everybody who's watching and anybody, you can never change anyone's mind. Because if you can't change someone's mind about Chris Benoit, you're not changing their mind about anything.
Right.
Benny, you want to weigh in on the interview and Chris Benoit?
Well, yeah, I'm going to backtrack because I met you guys right about this time last year. Mike, you and Jimmy came down to Florida. We drank with Mike Mantar, God rest his soul, at a bar in Hudson Beach Bar. And Mike, you started interviewing. We really didn't know each other that well at the time. You started interviewing me, and I found myself telling you shit that I would never tell anybody. I'm a very private person. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, I'm telling this guy shit that I would never tell anybody. So I guess my point is that when I was 11 years old, and this is a true story, when I was 11 years old, I wrote away to the IRS, don't judge me, got a 1040 manual, and I did my parents' tax return in the 6th grade.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I did it every year after that. So like I was born to be a numbers guy, an accountant. Mike, you and Jimmy, you were born to be interviewers. And I mean, Chuck Palumbo, the wrestler, kind of indifferent. Chuck Palumbo, the guy, man, all the respect in the world for the guy.
Oh, yeah. He looks great, too.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
And I meant what I said on the interview, Jimmy and Benny. The guy is like, I want to grow up and be Chuck Palumbo. The guy's good looking, hot girlfriend, living in San Diego. The guy's living a life.
Yep. You know, it's funny too, Mike. We talk about this all the time, and I can't help it. I got to bring it up. After you get done with the interviews, you usually make snippets, whether they're 5 minutes, whether they're 10 minutes, highlights of the interview, right? So there's this wonderful snippet you made, Chuck Palumbo, on when he saved his parents from a burning fire, a house fire, whatever it was, and did. The traffic for it is low right now, right? And then you put up Chris Benoit. 3,000 views in 10 seconds. Oh, he didn't do it. What an evil, sorry, folks, what an evil world we live in. When you can't get people to watch Chuck talk about how he saved his parents from a burning fire, but all you have to do is put Chris Benoit eats White Castle and doesn't feel well after. Oh my God! 50,000 views. People are insane. And you wonder how Ozzy Osbourne and Black Sabbath had such a great career. Now we know why, because we all lurk in the dark. They make fun of the people who make fun of Ozzy probably have this entire Sabbath discography.
You're so right. The guy saved someone's life, and no one gives a shit. Right. Chris Benoit, it's like,
Right, exactly.
Wow, I can't believe you brought that up.
I can't help it because you love to talk and use that word microcosm. Well, there you go, Mike. There's the microcosm of society right there.
It is sad.
It is sad. It's very sad.
What do you think about that, Benny, that people still defend Chris Benoit? And they're not scared to do it either. And by the way, if you say something bad, like, let's use this for example. We bring on someone that defends Mel Phillips, right? Mm-hmm. People are like, ah!
Oh yeah.
But and people are afraid to defend, like, even if they believe that Mel Phillips is innocent. I'm not saying he is or not, right? I have no clue.
Right.
But they wouldn't dare post online like Mel Phillips is innocent, leave the man alone, because they're afraid. Right. But there's people actually have no problem defending Chris Benoit.
Right. I find it hilarious when we get attacked for doing what journalists do. We tell every side of the story. Well, and then we get attacked, and nobody's coming to our rescue, Mike.
Well, I mean, and in fairness to you guys, like I said, if I was not a wrestling fan, if I had never heard of Monte and the Pharaoh before, and I happened upon that interview with Gerard, I never would have known what side you were on, and that's
Thank
good
you.
journalism.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
And to be honest, Benny, we're not on any side, right? We're just saying there's
But I mean,
always
that was
gray in
totally
everything that you
objective.
do.
You ask questions and you let the viewers make up their own mind.
Right.
Listen,
Right.
I divorced my wife. She's got one story. I got the other. The truth is in the middle, just like everything else. But there is no truth in the middle with Chris Benoit. He fucking killed his family. There's no in the middle there. There's no Vince McMahon behind it. And that's the other thing, too. It's like, why does Vince McMahon get the blame for Randy Savage's things, Stone Cold Steve Austin, whatever he's done? It's Vince's fault. Chris Benoit. Listen, I'll ask you both right now. Do you believe that Vince McMahon paid off Allentown police to hide the murder of Nancy Argentina or the alleged murder? Do you think Vince McMahon had his hand in that at all?
No, I don't. No, I don't. And I don't understand. Look, I've been on record many times saying that Vince has done some things that make me want to strangle him, but that does not mean that I get carried away and start to think of Vince McMahon as the wrestling equivalent of John Gotti, or somebody along those lines. It's like, where is this coming from that Vince killed Chris Benoit? Really? Where is that coming from? Number one, why would he want to in the first place? Chris Benoit was not worth that to him in the first place. Okay.
Oh, no, he was having sex with Nancy Benoit, so that's,
Oh, come on, man. Come on.
I'm just
stop it already. And I love it. Like, why don't we just take a shit on the police force that investigated the Chris Benoit case while we're at it? Because that's what they do when they come up with this garbage. That the police force didn't do their job, or the police force was paid off by Godfather McMahon. This is some of the stupidest shit. And to quote Coach earlier today, I asked him about it. He goes, they probably saw it in a movie. That's where this crap comes from.
It's way too much of a stretch to think that he could do that. Much as I'm not a fan of Vince McMahon, I can't wrap my arms around that he would actually, be able to go into a police department with money and just bribe them to overlook a murder. It's not possible.
Hey, Sarge, there's a wrestling promoter outside. He wants to talk to you.
Yeah, he's got money.
By the way, I think trying to win over a public or a federal employee is a felony, right? It's like you're going to take that chance with your briefcase of money. Here you go.
Right.
I mean, come on.
I mean, if that backfires,
wait a minute, Loose. Snuka, Vince McMahon could have done something. Benoit, not at all, completely different. That's what Loose says. And he goes, 1982, guys, remember. Loose, I totally get it's 1982. But this is Vince McMahon. Let's run through it real quick. Jimmy Snuka is probably the biggest star at the time. This is pre-Hulk Hogan. But Vince McMahon has already bought the company from his father. He's already, he's borrowing from Peter to pay Paul the whole way through. Jimmy Snuka screws up. He doesn't want to lose that talent. So far, hey, there's a possibility, right? I can't lose this talent. But is he going to – everybody forgets. After the Snuka cage match and Snuka Piper, Hogan was already there. By WrestleMania 1, Snuka was an afterthought. That's literally can't be but 8 months later.
Right.
And he's an afterthought. To risk your entire company for a guy who's an afterthought? Now, if you would have told me maybe it was Hulk Hogan or Stone Cold Steve Austin, all right, maybe. Jimmy Snuka? No way.
No way. No way. He basically held Snuka down, and Snuka faded away. The end. And if you're gonna do something so immoral like that, and I must have him, he's my huge star, and you pay the money to the precinct or whatever it was, aren't you gonna push him to the moon after that? You've already invested. You've already jumped into that shithole.
So Luce is saying that Vince devalued Snuka. That's true. Because he couldn't trust them and he believed he was a murderer. It doesn't mean that he paid anyone off.
Right.
Again, I think to be honest with you, I think that the cops just dropped the ball. They were just, she fell. We believe him. That is all. Right. They might have even asked wrestlers at that point and said, did you see what happened? And
Right.
why isn't anyone screaming about Morocco? Morocco was like, uh-oh, I got a payday. He didn't do shit. You don't know that. Who knows? Vince is okay. Luce, Maria, Jason, Don the barber, you all work for someone. If you go home and murder your family, your employer is not responsible. No one's going to interview your employer and say you're going to be held up and possibly go to jail because your employer murdered its family. That's not how it works.
Right. Well, think about this too. And has anybody ever said it's Bill Belichick's fault that Aaron Hernandez turned out to be a gangster and did all those horrible things? Maybe he should have had his eye on him. Maybe there's 53 guys on an NFL roster that Belichick had. He can't be a pop for every single person. You can't watch them all the time. And the WWE roster is bigger than 53 names. So stop it.
By the way, Donna Barber says, well, they swept the ring boy under the rug. You know what? You're right, Don. You know why? Because at some point, I think in a company, they go, hey, you know what? There's a bunch of ring setup people. We don't have to report it. We'll get away with it. That I agree with. In the 80s, you could sneak some stuff around. Yeah. I'm sure that happened. I'm not going to disrupt my business for some side, independent guys that I'm having set up my ring, whatever,
Right. But also, I'd like to point out that on the record, Mike, and correct me if I'm wrong. So far, all we got as far as true details from the Ring Boys is a foot rub and a cold night in a van.
That is the truth. Not once did Lee tell the truth, tell anything. His sister couldn't tell us anything, and she was a wonderful lady. Don't get me wrong, okay? And let's not forget, the guy was of age. He was 18 years old. I'm sorry, Maria Davis. If I'm attracted to you, I have a right to ask you on a date. You have a right to say no. Now, if you work for me and I ask you out and you say no, and then the next time I say, if you don't come out with me, I'm going to punish you, that's completely different. Did that happen? Didn't that happen? We don't know.
We don't know. We don't know.
Right. But according to Gerard, there was nothing wrong until Tom Cole found out that he was out and other ring boys were in.
Right.
Again, we don't know. You don't know. But here's one thing I do know, guys, and answer me this. And again, I'm not trying to harp on Lee Cole. But Lee Cole was arrested for kidnapping. Okay? Theft and kidnapping. Okay? It's you could look it up. Lee Cole III, kidnapping. How does anyone believe a guy, if anything that he's saying, right? He took money from Vince McMahon after this whole thing. Vince gave him $20,000. Thanks, Vince. He kidnapped someone. He stole. He went to jail. Why do people believe people like this and don't believe the other side?
Take it away, Benny.
Well, I'm going to make this real simple. I'm going to go biblical here. And there's a passage in the Bible, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. And Lee Cole should not have any rocks in his hand.
Amen.
Last person that should be thrown any rocks.
Love that.
Well, basically, and it's so hypocritical, when people decide they hate someone, they will disregard the very same character flaws in someone else if it's supporting their hatred towards that said individual. So basically, it's like, well, he's fighting the fight that I want to fight, so I'll ignore all those things you said about him, Mike, and just because this is about us hating Vince or this is about us hating, whatever. That it happens all the time. It doesn't make it right, but it happens all the time. I mean, it's a little different, but it's also very extreme. You've asked me more than once, what's your deal with Charlie Manson?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. Keep going, bro. That's exactly what I wanted.
My deal with Charlie Manson is just that I'm fucked up, and I don't have a logical reason as to why I fucking find Charlie Manson to be very fascinating, and sometimes even feel sorry for him because of his childhood. At the end of the day, I got to say this, though. I think this is what separates me from all of these lunatics we're talking about currently online. I would be the first one to say time to string him up by his toes. Because Charlie was guilty of causing a lot of misery and death. The end. It doesn't mean that I still don't find him fascinating, though. So it's hard to explain that stuff, but at least I do know the difference between right and wrong. I mean, it's not like I ever had a picture of Charlie on my wall, for God's sakes.
Listen, that I'm not a fan. I'm obviously not a big supporter of Charlie Manson, but I will agree with the one thing. Charles Manson never killed anybody, at least that we know of, right? He just directed people to kill somebody.
Not that we know of. I think there might be a couple connected to him. Benny probably knows better than I do, but I think before the Manson murders themselves, there was a couple of shady things that happened.
You talk about feeling sorry for Manson. The guy's mother actually went to a bar and tried to trade him for a pitcher of beer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
No, it's a true story.
Oh, yeah.
What kind of hope does anybody like that have?
But and you know what's weird? He has no hope.
Like, I don't know what kind of, I don't know if it was a Coors Light, or I don't know what kind of beer it was, but
wow, a Coors Light. Man. You couldn't even get him traded for one of those stouts or something like that.
Like Milwaukee.
Oh my God. I'll tell you what though, Charlie Manson is more sane than a lot of these hate mongrels that we see typing on the internet, because Charles Manson realized he himself is a problem. And I don't know if you know this, Mike, but he actually begged the courts, please don't let me out. I don't belong out there. I'm comfortable in here. I'm with people who are like me, fucked up, and I'm fucked up, and it's not going to work with me out there. Please leave me in here. And they basically said, sorry, it's a numbers crunch. You've served your time. You've served it honestly, and you got to go out. And he didn't want to, right, Benny? He didn't want to even leave jail. He was like, no, I'm a bad guy. I don't fit in with this. Don't let me out. You know, he had some accountability, as crazy as it sounds, even though he didn't.
By the way, Big Tuna says, guys, if he does not bring this up, he won't have a wrestling show. So he's referring to Lee that just continues on the Vince McMahon thing.
Correct.
Again, I don't get it. He has no inside knowledge of wrestlers. No. He's just a felon who kidnapped somebody that happened to have a brother who claimed to be molested at 18 years old.
Right.
And by the way, Tom Cole ended up being a pretty successful guy with a nice family, so things ended up okay after all. And somehow the guy gets brain cancer and kills himself. We don't blame the brain cancer. We blame Vince McMahon.
Of course.
Not the brain cancer, Vince McMahon.
Right.
I don't know. Right. I don't know what to say anymore.
Vince McMahon developed brain cancer in a lab. I read that today. You didn't hear that? You know, I mean, it just never ends. And eventually, you know, he's going to run out of fume because it's the same old garbage. And you know what, though, Mike, since you're doing this, I might as well say this, too. Where the hell do you get off taking $20,000? What happened to you that you needed to take 20 grand? He took 20 grand from the Lee Cole situation for himself. What? Wait a minute. What? Yeah, he has said that he wasn't around for his brother when all this was going down, and he decided to intervene. Do you think he smelled some money? I mean, let me put it this way. If God forbid, oh my God, if God forbid this had happened to my brother, okay, I would not, and I got $20,000, I'd hand it to my brother. I'd be like, dude, I don't even know why I got this check. I can't keep this in good conscience. That you take it. You know what I mean? I'm like, what the hell am I even getting a check for? Nothing happened to me. You know, whatever, man, whatever.
Any final thoughts on this?
Lee Cole is the 2024 version of the Reverend Sung Young Moon, and all these people are Moonies following him without the ability to think their own critical thinking. And I mean, that's what attracted me to you guys in the first place.
Right.
Was that you asked thought-provoking questions to people that when they answered, you could make your own judgments, not, throwing shit against the wall and having all these, these minions just hang on your every word like a lemming, which is what he's doing.
Well, that's what I really liked about Chuck Palumbo, right? I thought he came at it from his viewpoint, what he knew, and I don't know. The guy came off very intelligent, very well thought out. And I mean, we got guys like Chuck Palumbo running around this planet. And you're like, you know what? The planet's in good shape. And then you got the Lee Coles running around in the world. And you're like, we're just in deep shit here, man. You know what I mean?
Yep. That's the way of the world, unfortunately. It is what it is. But you got to keep your eye on people like that. Actually, I leave it to you to keep your eye on people like that, Mike. I appreciate that. Thanks. Keep your eye on that guy.
Listen,
we
all
live in a
I know
world-
is
we
this,
live in a
and
world where
I hope I know
sensationalism is-
Lee's watching because Lee watches us all the time. This is what I
Okay.
say, Lee. When you lay down in bed at night in your one-room apartment because your wife left you, which I know she did,
Oh
all
my
right,
God.
and you know the truth about your brother, and like Big Tuna says. To me, Lee Cole's just trying to be like Vince. Everything he does is on YouTube as a work, just trying to make a payday. Maria Davis, even though Lee Cole said his brother was molested, Lee never went to correct the wrong that happened. So now Lee Cole is still making money on his brother's name and still brings him speculation. That's right. That's right, Maria. And that's the point. When Lee lays down, that's the funny thing. You can't hide from yourself. You can lie to me. You can lie to your mother. You can lie to your wife. You can't lie to yourself. And Lee Cole's laying in bed at night. You know the truth, man. You know your brother didn't get molested. You know you're trying to make money on it. And you know what? Again, we gave you a platform to tell your story. And again, I didn't want to make this a Lee Cole thing. I don't know why it happened. Because we went into Benoit. That's right. It was Benoit because I think I heard him saying stuff about Benoit. How Vince knew that Benoit was going to kill his family or something.
Right.
What a disrespectful comment towards, Nancy and the son, by the way.
Yeah.
Lee has to lay down at night, and when he lays down at night, he knows the truth. And you know what? When God comes to get him, whatever, then you're gonna have to face your brother. How do you think your brother's gonna feel about what you're doing right now?
Well, it sounds like from what we've heard about the late Tom Cole that Tom never wanted the attention, especially afterwards. Even when he tried to go back to the company, he didn't want this sort of attention, and that's exactly what's happening. He's getting this attention that he probably spent the rest of his life trying to get the hell away from.
Well, Maria
And
said it best. Now
Yes.
now he's brought attention on his brother that people are questioning whether his brother's the truth. Because I don't care. Whoever's watching Lee Cole knows the guy's a scumbag, right? You can't not know the guy's a scumbag. You can't not know he's a dirtbag, right?
Well, apparently, the blind leads the blind. So obviously, there are some. Look, people in the past have proven that they'll follow someone who's a scumbag if he somehow fits their little window. And I think that this is another one of those situations. Like we know, but I'm afraid to say it. But nobody else, over there seems to know. So. Drink the Kool-Aid, enjoy it. I like the Reverend Moon reference. Drink the Kool-Aid, enjoy it, and then deal with the aftermath because it'll come eventually. You can only spout hatred, but this is like the boy who cried wolf. It really is.
Well,
It is the boy who cried wolf, and at the end of the day, there's going to be no one's going to come when he really has a real issue because everybody's going to be like, ugh, yeah, it's you. Yeah, we've heard you squawking in the woods. Keep squawking. We don't hear you anymore.
Play any final words, man?
I mean, the guy's got what, 3 daughters, Tom Cole. Do they really want his name being kicked around like this? I can't imagine they would.
I would think not. But I don't think that bothers Lee at all. Lee's about Lee.
And shame on him for that.
Yeah, well,
I mean, those are your nieces. I mean, have a little respect for your family. It's not helping his legacy.
Mike, do you think that's why his sister, who we had on the show, is so lukewarm towards him? And you think that's got something to do with that?
I think you're giving it really too much credit, Jimmy. Lukewarm is an overstatement.
I'm trying as usual. I'm trying not to be as bad as the very people we're talking about. I'm trying. It's not working, but I'm trying.
But she certainly made it clear she had no relationship with him.
Right.
Which could be odd because he's the one that got me in communication with her. So I don't know how that actually happened.
Right.
Again, there was a point where I liked Lee Cole. I think I told you that, and I think I told you I knew he was the underbelly of society. That was never lost on me, but I didn't think overall he was a bad guy. In this last month, I realized that Lee Cole is as scummy as you can get. He's just a scumbag.
The very thing that he seems to hate the most about Vince McMahon is arrogance, and honestly, that's what I sensed out of him in the last month. I was like, wow. this guy really is in love with himself. I'm like, he completely forgot about when he first came on our show that nobody was going to give him a forum. We helped him, and then he turned around and started stabbing us and calling our show shit and stuff. Well, what do you expect now, bro? You think I'm going to like you after that?
And he lied about you guys. He said that you guys called his brother a liar. You never called him a liar.
No, I know that I never did.
I listened to every second of that episode.
Right.
Did not.
Mike didn't either.
By the way,
no, absolutely.
By the way, Tuna says he should take all the money he says he made on YouTube and give it to his nieces. How about that for an idea? I love that idea. Do you think he would?
I would actually have more respect for the guy if he did that.
Right.
Is there any chance he would do that?
No. Or if you want to go one further, he could take all that money and give it to sexual harassment group that's trying to get the message out.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
He could do something like that, but he's never going to do anything like that. And you know what? Shame on him for talking shit about the very forum that helped him get his feet under
Make him relevant.
I mean,
by the way, talk about changing agendas. When he was on the show, he said that he felt that Janelle Grant was a liar, that Vince was responsible for other stuff, but not this. Now he's changed that too. Now it's
right.
Vince tricked her into all this. So by defending Vince in that way, it wasn't meeting his agenda. Yeah. Anyway, couple of quick announcements. Jimmy, we've signed a deal with Tin Mirror.
Okay.
We'll be at Tin Mirror. So we'll be doing the show Thursday from this. ESO will produce us on Thursday. And then we'll be back in studio next week after that.
Okay.
So we kind of bounce back. Benny, I wanted to talk to you about Dan and Benny doing very well, not only on video where they are on the Monte The Pharaoh channel.
Made it up to number
You're
42
doing fantastic on the audio. What's the recipe for success, bro?
I don't know. I mean, 2 Italian guys, and we're over like Rover in Ireland. Go figure, right?
Yeah.
I will not stop. I will not retire until we crack the charts in Malta.
Malta.
That's my silver tuna. Yeah, we got to crack the charts in Malta.
All right.
We want to say goodnight to everybody. Thanks for joining us on this Monday. What a day's here. Chimed in off the Monte The Pharaoh show.
What a day.
What a day.
By the way, What a Day did a recap show on Sunday, which was fantastic. He also
good show. Yeah, really good show.
Recap. I got to give Joe a lot of props. Everybody on this channel is doing very hard work, and we want to always thank the family, Jason, Luce, Maria, Big Tuna, Isban, Don the Barber, I said Jason already. Who else? Steve Kotenberg. Feel better with your shoulder, bro. Feel much better. Little Patty, Beth Harper, one of your favorite fans, Benny. She loves you.
Mike,
anyway, we want to thank.
Mike, you didn't mention. Did you wind up tossing him in a hole in Hoboken somewhere? What happened to Mike Fenster? Was he chasing you around the convention?
Oh, so I'll give you a quick Fenster story. So Fenster is a good guy, kind of. He's come to our studio a few times, and he's takes up a lot of Jimmy's time. So Fenster always finds us on the big event, and this was the best. I was with Johnny Photo, who's been on the show. So Johnny, who used to work for the WWE, he likes to go to these events, and he likes to see all his friends from the WWE. It's funny, they don't even realize he's fired. They're like, "Where you been? I haven't seen you." He's like, "I've been fired for like 4 years." Really? So it's like that's the conversation.
What a tight-knit community, huh?
So anyway, when you see Fenster walking around a big event, he's headed your way. So I was hiding behind Johnny Photo, which I was successful for like 5 hours at the big event. Finally, I'm hiding, and I hear Fenster yell to Sims, "Have you seen Monty?" And Sims is like, "Yeah, it's right here." And I'm like, "Oh, what the?" So, I had to spend my moments with Fenster again. But then I made sure he took pictures with Eric, which I knew Eric wasn't happy about. So it all evened itself out.
Revenge is sweet. Smile, Eric.
Smile, Eric. If you ever go to these events, go with Fenster. because that guy gets free photos with these guys. I think they just want him out of their face. Can I get a photo?
Anything. That's
Yeah,
just
just come
anything.
on.
Here you go. Here, have my entire portfolio. Go. I can see that. I can see that. Yeah, I can see
Roxo
that.
Willie, good to see you. All right, guys, thanks for joining us on Monday. Jimmy, always great to see you. I'll see you on Thursday. The player. Oh, by the way, give a shout out to Coach, man. That guy rocks, Jimmy.
Oh yeah, my buddy Coach Brian over at the shop we work at. He hosts ESPN on Mondays. Usually every Monday he's doing ESPN down here, 104.3. Mike, I don't know enough details, but I will tell you a little bit quick about his background. At one point, he was one of the nation's top 3 college university swim coaches.
Wow.
So, and he's still doing it. I think he's running the board on the coast down here for like a bunch of different colleges, So Coach is a really, really busy guy. I don't think he sleeps, you guys might have a similar schedule, but he is great to be around. He's a great guy, and he's really great as a broadcaster. He's fantastic. So it's been a natural fit to be friends with him, to run into him just out of coincidence, and boom, we're on ESPN now, you and me, Mondays, which we will be doing a pre-WrestleMania and a post-WrestleMania on ESPN with the Coach Brian.
The guy's awesome, and what an honor it is to be on that show with him. Benny, as always, thank you for your dedication to this channel. Thank you for your talent. You're a wonderful guy.
You're the man, Benny.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you all.
Mike.
Ciao.
Awesome. Later.
Bye-bye.